Hey, it's Crumbs. You're lost? How do you not know where you are? It's Thorin's channel.
As a disclaimer at the beginning of this video, I own stock in Snipe, the Swedish company that created ProView and licenses it to Riot Games, something that people can refer to, and so we have all our cards on the table at the beginning of this video. With that said, I did not develop the technology of ProView. I was actually involved with the company when they were developing a similar project for CSGO. Before the League of Legends edition came out, I wasn't involved with any of the details of it in that regard. I consulted with them, I worked on content, and I elsewhere was involved with their company. Now, ProView is the technology which you yourself can rent, you can pay for, which allows you to basically watch the player that you choose to watch and watch everything he does in the game and focus solely on him. You can watch other players as well. You can build your own custom way of viewing the game, basically. It's like the ultimate way to watch a VOD with way more options than a VOD itself would carry. So it essentially addresses the lack of quality replays and replay function entirely for years in League of Legends. I mean, even the ones that they attempted to implement were just absolute a shambles compared to what they should have been and what should, quite frankly, always have been in the game. If people don't know, games like the original Quake had replays from day one, StarCraft day one. Like, you could just access these. They were very small, actually. It was very easy to watch. Like, League of Legends probably should have been in that category, but instead, mysteriously, we didn't have it for years. Because to me, it was always utterly insane that Riot Games talked this good game about wanting esports to grow and be big and wanting like the esports side of the game to be massive with journalism and content and broadcast rights. And yet, you had all these years of League of Legends as an esport with hundreds of millions of dollars being pumped into it, where people didn't have full access to what even happened to the 10 players in the game during that game at all times. Like, this is insane to me that everyone wasn't in an outrage and absolutely up in arms at all times about this, because you essentially had to guess at certain times what was happening to a player that the camera wasn't on. You had to look at the mini-map, you had to infer based on the score later on off the obituaries that happened, or you just had to hope that you got lucky and the camera, the observer, happened to be looking at that thing at that moment. As a result, you could never see a whole laning phase from Faker or Uzi or Rookie, Deft, Reckless, Forgiven, Froggen, Perks, Caps, name whoever the fuck you want. You couldn't see Mithy, Matter, Mickey X, all the Yankos, Diamond Prox, Dandy, all these legendary players. You had to just see part of their game in a way that doesn't exist in any other major sport as far as I'm aware. So one of the reasons why this annoys me so much that it took this long for anything to be developed, in this case it was a third-party option, of course, because who the fuck could trust Riot Games? Because the LPL itself had its own alternative to this. When League got big in China, and the LPL was really going strong, so Season 5 is a classic example, they used to put out streams for all the players playing in the match. If you knew where to access it, obviously through all Chinese software, etc., and websites, you could find a stream for each player. I know I used to myself, after Kelsey Moser told me about it, used to go back when Flame was on LGD playing in the LPL, and even though he was a sub, because you played so many fucking games back then, it was best of 2, he still used to end up playing like, 16 games in a split, which is like almost a full LCS. But so I would go, and when they fielded him, it was nearly always in the, I think it was usually in the first game, and then they brought Akon in the second one, if I'm not mistaken. I would just go and I would watch his whole game. I'd watch his laning phase. I'd watch what he did in the whole match. I would just watch his stream. The problem then is, oftentimes they didn't back up all those VODs, and it was just a one-time thing. You had to catch it live. So along comes ProView, this technology by which you can now pay, and you can get this service. You can access it on its very high quality. Now, what's cool is there are plenty of people paying for this, and it is getting a lot of watching hours, especially per person. It's actually very impressive with some of the things I've heard from behind the scenes. I'm also amazed from all the talk shows I've done in interviews, the amount of times players themselves, pro players, bring it up and talk about having used it. Like, I believe on Elitist United, I think Kazi said that he'd studied the way that Perks played, or maybe I'm thinking of Inax when he joined Schalke. They were talking, I think it might have been Inax actually, they were talking about how he'd followed Perks when he was an AD carry, and he'd really learned some interesting things about the way he positioned. He positioned more like a mid laner, but he had an interesting sort of innovative view on how AD carry was played, contrasting that with Caps instead. I've heard people comment who were the other great mid laners on how Caps played as a mid laner, and their admiration for him based on being able to see where he clicks, what he can see, how his reaction time making some of these moves. People obviously are obsessively watching the greatest players. People want to know how some of these top elite Koreans play, etc. So when another angle of people who are looking at this isn't just pro players, isn't just super fans. It's coaches who want to study the opponent or study the best in their role to help their player positionally or in terms of how he works in the game. It's analysts, again, trying to study the game. I'm talking about content creators too here, trying to know as deeply as possible what these players like. Like, is Wunder better than NateDOhDoubleG? Does Wunder have a better team than him? We can go watch an improv view, right? Experts, obviously, similarly, people who are trying to know as much as they can about the game, have more data, have more options to go and watch this stuff. Basically, now, people with this tool can go as deep as they want to go. It's not that they're limited or bottlenecked by Riot or what spectating options we have. They can go deep on this shit. That means I would hope that some of those topics that LS has brought up over the years in his coaching, like using the function keys to have basically the equivalent of like heat mapping them, or hot, how did you call it? Hot mapping them, I think you call it in StarCraft, where you change the keys and you can move all around. In this case, to watch all the lanes, or constantly spamming between the minimap and elsewhere. Like the things that people think LS does, they think he's just being a hipster. They don't know some of the best Koreans. Like if you watched Faker, you'd see he does this shit all the time. And it's part of why he has insane map knowledge of what's going on in the game. How he can know where his jungler is, what's happening at that point in time, and still make his crazy plays himself. Now, the reason it's crazy to me that this wasn't adopted by more people, especially in a world where people brag that they grind in the game and try to study it as much as they can, is you go to a sport like tennis or basketball, there's a decent amount of emphasis placed on the form that you have. Exactly, in this case, the analog to where you're clicking, how you click, the speed, how smooth you are, the technique that you use, how well you execute upon it. Like the idea that I had to, from season 4 or 5 onwards, have idiots telling me like, well, everyone can just farm in League of Legends. So, yeah, Froggen's not even doing anything. That's everyone just farm. Like, they don't know the difference between farming with all your abilities and just killing the minions and pushing it in, and getting every single last hit while still not being harassed off the farm by the other person and playing without jungle interaction. Like, and losing matchups and still only being like 10 CS down after 15 minutes. They never even stopped to think about these things. And so, unfortunately, their ignorance is what bottlenecked them from knowing there was more to look at. But they wouldn't have had the tools to really look into it anyway. So, to me, one of the coolest things is it's so easy also to just find the moments in a game that happen. They have a feed where you can click on when the kills happened, when they take towers. And you can just skip to that moment in what is essentially a super advanced VOD in that regard. So I think that's even quite cool if you want to quickly pass through a demo. You want to just look at the key moments. You want to go to a specific key moment that you don't know about. If that was a demo that you had to play from the beginning and then fast forward and rewind on. Everyone knows from CSGO, from StarCraft, how tricky those can be. I think also, quite frankly, there is massive potential for the future. Like some of the different ways they can and will package this tool, they will potentially use it as part of a marketing campaign. I think there's so much can be done. It's so exciting, actually, because I think now, if you're a super fan, as someone who wants to go as deep as possible, an aficionado of League of Legends, first of all, you don't have to just watch the Riot broadcast. Hopefully, they keep co-streaming going, and you can watch LS, or you can watch Veteran, or you can watch whoever it might be in the region that they follow. Papa Smithy, if he'd have been doing it back in the day. That's awesome. If you want to go as deep and be as nerdy as possible without the casual casting, there is something for you. I hope this tool similarly represents a toolkit that people who are the fans who really want to go deep can have to improve their own individual play, to help them level up in solo queue, but also to enjoy the pro game, to really dig into it, see what's down there, what the meat and the veg of the game is, not just the surface aspect, the presentation, and the little highlights you get every now and then. Let's really go as deep as we can into the game. I mean, as I alluded to before, it initially was launched as a CSGO product before it was licensed by Riot and came to League of Legends, which was where I was involved largely. It was giving them a lot of my ideas in the Counter-Strike world. But I think in League of Legends, it has insane potential. I hope that actually they will continue to make sure that it's available in all the major regions. I hope that this will be a way that younger players actually can level up their game. They don't have to wait to play against Perks or Faker and find out, oh, there's a different level to this shit. They can go watch his game and see, oh, he's already doing some things I don't do. Like, look at the way he moves here, try and find out what he's doing at that point in time. Like, this is a way where, just as, I'll give you the analogy, at the beginning of StarCraft Brood War, a detail a lot of people won't know is that right early on in the game, when after like a year or two, the great Korean player Boxer, the first true Bonjour, truly great player, came along. One of the things that was interesting was he came along in the era when there weren't replays. And so as a result, at this period in time, you could do an amazing one-off strategy, and either someone had to go and get the VOD and try and pick it apart, or they didn't know what you were doing at that point in time. So as a result, someone who was incredibly innovative and creative like he was able to get way ahead of the game, and people had to just battle him reactively in the moment. Later, when you could study every replay, every detail of it, you could practice it 1,000 times what he's done, or the counter to it 1,000 times. As a result, guess what? Boxer started to fall out of favour, was winning way, way less, eventually didn't win again. Meanwhile, someone like Nada, who was about, yes, inventing some of the playbook, but then refining the play, he became the master of the game. Now it was about execution. I'd say Flash later on in the game, 2010s on, did a similar thing. He became the monster of the game. So I think the potential to level up the game strategically, how we think about the game, the meta game, and also the minutiae. You can now watch how Federer does his serve, how Michael Jordan does his footwork going to the basket, as it were, how Muhammad Ali slips a punch and hits a right hook onto someone. This is what Pro View essentially allows you to do. So at the moment, it's been a slight sort of sea change with ripple effects going out, and certainly business-wise, it's done well both for Riot and for the company involved. But I think the potential for a real revolution in thought, in thinking, and how we analyze the game, the depth that the most, I would say the most invested people, the people who care about League of Legends, who really love the game a lot, like LS, like Veteran, like some of these people, how deep they can go and what they could potentially do for us in the future, especially if Riot allows them to use ProView in their content. I'd heard previously you weren't allowed to do that for some reason. If there's an option, hell, make it an option that you pay $5 or $10 as a content creator to use the ProView option in your content. It shows off the tool, shows off the game. It would only make the scene better, stronger, and more interesting for my money. So I'm very interested to sit back. Obviously, I have a financial interest potentially one day down the line. If not, it's a cool program anyway, in seeing how this works out, this ProView revolution. This video was kindly supported by Alexander Rao, Dean Tanglis, Emanuel Särnbratt, JDubs, NateDOhDoubleG, the Puyallup Tribe, Tobias Bernasconi, Xinged, and a special thanks always goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my shows? Maybe ask a question in my monthly video AMA? Do you want teasers? Who are the guests on my next content? Maybe you want to take part in one of those donated discussions with me where we go really deep into the weeds. Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today in the description box link below.